Thanks everybody for joining. We'll wait for another 1 minute for more people to be joining us, and then we'll start the Good, and welcome to this webinar co-organized by Chapter Zero Brussels, the Family Business Network, and Etex. I'd like to particularly welcome all Family Business Network members joining us today. Chapter Zero Brussels, as you might know, is an emanation of the World Economic Forum that aims to enable boards and directors in the fight against greenhouse gas emissions. Our activities do include events and trainings, like our famous Director of Climate Journey, which we co-organize with the Cleric. I am Pascal Dormal. I'm a board member of Chapter Zero Brussels. We are very happy to welcome our guests today, Bernard Delvaux and Sergio Sandoval from Etex. Bernard Delvaux is one of the leading executives in Belgium advocating for developing a real industrial policy that should be sustainable as well. His career has brought him to executive roles at Coquille Sambre, McKinsey, Belgacom, The Post, Sonaca, and he is now today the CEO of Etex. Sergio Sandoval is Etex Group Head of Sustainability. Etex is a particularly interesting company, as its sector accounts for a full 26% of greenhouse gas emissions, while its network of suppliers and clients literally involves thousands of companies. The logistics for the meeting, after the initial, say, roughly 30 minutes presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions to the speakers. Please use the Q&A on the bottom of your screen, the Q&A part to ask your questions. You will remain muted, but I will relay your questions to Bernard and Sergio. Bernard, Sergio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pascal. It's a pleasure to be here and have some time to talk to you about Etex and its sustainability journey, which is a very important one for us. And I will start with an introduction on Etex. Etex is a company which is not that well known, even if it's a large company and a Belgian company. It's a company that started more than 100 years ago. And I think a lot of people know about Eternit, which was the original name of the company. And then after having been very successful with the Eternit product for many, many decades, we started facing problems in the 70s, 80s, 90s with the asbestos issue. We got out of the asbestos issues and we were able to redevelop the business around different types of building materials. So we are a company producing building materials. And what was interesting also is, well, before I came to this company, I joined this company 2 years ago, the company had decided to focus on lightweight construction. And by definition, lightweight construction was basically sustainable products, sustainable raw material used, and sustainable products which would be low in CO2, much lower than classical products with cement, blocks, and things like this. Products which would be efficient during the life cycle of the building, like the 40 years, typically 40 years, 50 years of the building, and products which would be recyclable at the end of the life cycle of the building. And this was a strategic decision taken to exit all products which were not part of this lightweight construction and sustainable products. And it happened in the last years. We completed the product portfolio recently. And what is interesting to know before we go into the details of this company is that this is a company which is still owned by the same family from the beginning. So we are listed on an export market, which is a not very liquid market in Brussels. Most of the shares are still owned by the same family, which is initially the Emsens family, which is now in the 5th generation. So it's interesting to see that you could have this kind of very stable ownership. And for sure, it has an influence on the way we manage this company on a daily basis. The company is now quite big. I think that we can, without giving you too much secret, tell you that we are around 4 billion revenues. We are around 700 million EBITDA. We have almost 14,000 employees in 45 countries. We have 160 factories in 45 countries. So it's a large company, which is still a little bit too much focused on Europe, 70% on Europe, but very strong in Latin America, in most of the countries where we are, in most of the cases, number one in these countries against competitors like Saint-Gobain or Knauf. We are also in Africa, South Africa and Nigeria. We are also very strong in Australia, and we have also large activities in China and Indonesia, and growing significantly for the time being in APAC. So a very interesting company with a lot of growth potential. We have organized the business basically in 5 divisions. One is named Building Performance, but the biggest part of the Building Performance division is Plaster and Plasterboard. 12 years ago, we acquired Lafarge Plaster and Plasterboard, which is the large French group. And this was 13 years ago, and it has been integrated into Etex at this time. And it's now part of this division, which is around 2 billion revenues, Plaster and Plasterboard. The second, I would say, division and platform is linked to fiber cement product, and the fiber cement product are the historical products of Etex, and there's still the brand Eternit for very specific application, mostly farmers. But we have other brands which are basically covering everything related to slates, sidings, facade, and terrace. The third business is industry, and it's a brand which is very well known by specialists, which is named ProMat. And ProMat is the world leader in fire protection. So every time you need to protect a school, an hospital, a skyscraper, and guarantee that it can resist 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes against fire, we can do that. We can model it, we can calculate it, and we can provide all the products which will make it sufficiently resistant. We recently, last year, we acquired the number 3 in Europe for insulation. We talk about glass wool, and we talk about extruded polystyrene, so two technologies. Ursa is the number 3 next to Knauf Insulation and Isover, and it's now fully 100% part of Etex. And then we have a 5th leg, which is a leg which is more forward-looking. We invested a few years ago in many different attempts, trials regarding prefab, what we name new ways. We tried a lot of things about 2D panels, 3D modules, wood frame, steel frame, B2B models, B2C models. I can tell you it was not easy. And now we are really refocusing on something we really believe in, which is 2D panels, steel frame. And this is something which is gradually increasing in the revenues of Etex, but will take time because we are facing a very inert market and fragmented market, which takes time to change. And what we do is we want to focus on these 5 technologies. So we think we have enough with the 5 legs we have today: gypsum, fiber cement, passive fire protection, insulation, and prefab. And for sure, also we have some strategic priorities, which are around people and quality of teams. This is what makes a difference in the value of a company. It's the quality of the individuals and the quality of the teams. We want to push operational excellence. When you have 160 factories, you need to make them work. Customer intimacy, customer experience, commercial excellence, you name it. is something which makes a big difference, because we could be selling commodity products, but what we want to do is really make clear that we are different from competition, and it's by bringing additional services and solutions and systems that we can prove that. And then finally, and it's probably the most important thing for us, sustainability and innovation is part of the story of Etex. And the way we communicate about that internally is that we will never be the biggest building material provider. Saint-Gobain will always be bigger than us. We will never be the cheapest, because we respect the rules. We pay social charges, and we are a quite ethical company. But we want to be the most sustainable and the most innovative. And I think we have the right products to do so. And sustainability is for us not only a threat, because it's a threat for all the industries today, because of regulation, because of additional costs, because of competition coming from countries which are not respecting the same rules. I was yesterday with the Prime Minister just before he left Belgium to COP28, discussing about that, discussing about finding the right balance between sustainability and competitiveness. So it's important. But for us, sustainability is much more than a threat. It's a big opportunity, because we have the right products. And this is why we are working a lot on improving our processes internally, our products, but also communicating towards the customers about that. And I propose that Sergio explain that to you.
Thank you, Bernard. Hello, everybody. So we're gonna basically take you through the journey of Etex, right? In terms of sustainability, it's a journey that has started quite a long time ago, but that recently, after Bernard came here, we have intensified and accelerated the topic internally. But at first glance, because everybody knows sustainability and everything that is related to sustainability is very important for the construction sector, right? Is around 35% of the global gas emissions, green emissions that are emitted yearly are coming from the construction embodied building materials, but also in the operation of the different buildings, right? And for instance, we also consume around 35% of the total water withdrawal globally is coming from the construction industry. So there is a lot of things that are basically doing and absorbing a lot of the sustainability topics in the construction. This is what it means for Etex. When you see we have around 11 daily trucks of waste sent to landfill, which could be preventative, and we could perhaps not do that. We have around 2,400 Olympic pools of water used every year in our processes, 3.6 million tons of greenhouse gases produced every year, 35% of women in office-based positions, and around 900,000 tons of circular materials in our products, included already in our products. So it is big numbers, and it means a lot of Etex, and that's why we also want to accelerate our journey here, right? This is, I'm not going to take you through all the slide, but it's just to say in 2019, we started to push for this. We joined some ESG ratings, Sustainalytics. We did the global SDGs, as everybody know, the UN Compact. We had our single materiality matrix done as well. We had our first sustainability report, which by now, later this year, beginning of this year, it was basically a combined annual report, a first combined report. We want to have it integrated in the next version or the year after. And there is a lot of progress in terms of also certifications like EcoVadis, where we are now silver. So there is a lot of, and this is just kind of to show the certifications and the things that we have done. We have another very important step that we have done lately is basically have our ambitions in place. I will not go through all of them, but obviously we remain very committed, and historically we are committed to safety in health and safety in Etex. We have diversity, equity, and inclusion. As I said, we want to really achieve a gender pay gap equality and have a lot of the policies included and procedures and practices distributed around Etex. Decarbonization, we have a minus 35% CO2 intensity for scopes 1 and 2 by 2030. And we are working hard to go even further. and maybe we will communicate that later. Then we have circularity, where we are pushing for circular content in our products. We are trying to avoid landfill, and then having a lot of working on packaging issues. And last but not least, I think it's super important, as Bernard was saying, we want to actually communicate about this. We want to be able to launch new products, use the fact that our products are offering a unique value proposition in terms of sustainability to engage with the customers. And behind this, there is a whole, I would say, battery of efforts in terms of awareness, in terms of building the certifications, building environmental product declarations, life cycle assessments, in order to build technically the support for all the different products that we have in the market. Maybe one last slide on how we are organized internally for doing this. We basically put a project that is coordinated and turns around 8 different work streams, where we have, for instance, things like decarbonization, as I explained, water. We have reporting and compliance, a very important topic right now for us, right? We have to do the taxonomy, we have to do an integrated report, comply with the CSRD. We are in the process of starting our double materiality analysis, which is, as you think, divided in 4 different business units. It's quite an effort. In diversity, equity, and inclusion, we also have done a lot of efforts in terms of unconscious bias trainings to all the people in the company, and trying to train them and realize these things are happening. And in circularity, we have very large program in terms of, for instance, just defining what is recycling and content internally in the different businesses, what it means for each of them, and what is slightly different and has a different lens is quite a process. Then we need to actually get the data, and working also on the kind of the back part, the backbone of the infrastructure of all these, which is we need to be able to get data to manage the different topics on circularity or water, for instance. Public affairs is very linked to what we are doing, because we think we need to be much broader, communicating what this industry needs to do, and how governments and regulators can help us to actually improve the way we position in terms of the CO2 emissions that we have, the decarbonization, the lightweight construction benefits versus traditional construction, right? And that is a very important topic for us, being with the antennas in the EU and the different countries of what is happening, and how can we discuss different topics and bring the good ideas. Then on communications, we are having a lot of communications internally, but also externally, in terms of with our clients and letting them know all the benefits of our products. And customer engagement is really how we go internally into the different businesses and work together with them in order to have very strict roadmaps at a local level, in order to be able to understand what are the next products, how are we going to communicate for the launch of those next products, and coordinating with innovation, as Bernard was saying, in order to have a program on launching these initiatives going forward. And this is just some of the topics that we are handling now. We are launching products like the Eco XPS in Germany, where we have a 50%, more than 50% content material, recycled content material inside the product. We are going to have water and packaging ambitions very soon coming in. We have understood our and worked quite hard in really measuring what is our CO2 footprint in terms of scope 1, 2, and 3. We are beginning to engage with all our customers, suppliers in the topic, and looking what are the next steps on this. Recycling, as I said, is very important for us, and we're working in the different platforms on this. We have also extended the EcoVadis the certification. We have, for instance, on Sustainalytics, and when we compare our ratings of Sustainalytics with the BEL 20 companies in Belgium, we are very well ranked in terms of this rating, and it's a very good achievement for us. Then we have the combined reports, double materiality. We have, for instance, also done 2 of our global summits on the topic, because for us it's super important to be able to distribute the message that the leadership of the company understands why we are doing this, and be able to cascade down the efforts, because in the end sustainability happens at the local level, right? And it's very important for us that the local people are engaged from the very beginning, and they are actually quite motivated into this delivering into the whole program of sustainability. And with that is the basically what we have done. There are many things behind that we are not talking because of the limits of time, but there is a lot of real material in this the different things that we have done. And now, Bernard, for you to maybe discuss a little bit on governance.
Before answering questions, maybe one word on governance, and like Sergio was saying, I think it's about aligning all the levels of governance from the shareholders to the employees on the shop floor. And it starts for us with the shareholders, and having a family shareholder, even if it's a broad family, and having young board members on board in the board every 2-3 months. I can tell you that we have a lot of pressure to integrate clear targets and objectives into the management objectives. And a good example is that this year, but it was already the case last year, all management, hundreds of people, have a bonus which is linked to the achievement of measured targets in terms of sustainability, which is linked to elimination of CO2, energy consumption reduction, but also diversity, equity, and inclusion results, and safety results. And so it has a direct impact on the individual bonus of management for hundreds of people in the company. And this is discussed with the board, and this is discussed with a specific committee which has been set up already years ago, which is named Sustainability Committee, which meets, let's say, 4 times, 5 times a year, and discuss the progress, discuss also what is evolving around us, because there is a lot of things happening with competition, with regulation, recommends to the board some decisions, starting with the objective, the ambition, and the communication around it, but also how management should be incentivized around that. But it's an important topic, and we spend a lot of time on that, and hours on that. And then for sure it translated into I think a lot of things. We have one central project that Sergio is managing, with very different stream under him, but very, very directly we go to the management, because it's not about having sustainability next to the business, it's about having sustainability integrated in the daily business, in the products, in the communication, in the processes, in the support functions everywhere. And this is why it's a kind of matrix organization which is influencing each technology and requesting from each business unit roadmaps about all aspects, all streams regarding sustainability. So it's, I wouldn't say it's perfect. For sure, we can improve, and we will improve, and we are integrating new things. I've seen that there are some questions about that, but for example, water is a new topic for us, which is a very crucial topic, because we see in some regions that water, which is part of the production process, is becoming scarce resource. So we are in the south of France, and we had issues this summer because no water. We are in Spain, and we start seeing water issues related to the production of glass wool. So this is becoming a big topic, and this is also a sustainability topic. So it's a new objective, it's a new plan coming, action plan coming. Another one that we will probably answer more in detail in the question is Scope 3. Everything related to Scope 3, first assessing where we are today, and then setting targets for improving, based on the fact that this is something we will not manage. For sure, we will partly manage, but the suppliers mostly will manage, is something which is very important. And then finally, I think that while we are pushed by shareholders, I can tell you we are pushed by employees. Okay. And basically we are kind of stuck between two types of pressure going in the same direction, which is we need to be a sustainable company, and they like to work for a company which is serious about that and which translate ambitions into action. And this is what we are trying to do. And this is something we are trying to do in a very uncertain time. And maybe we will have a discussion on that also, because what we see is that, first of all, Europe is approaching the topic differently from the rest of the world. It's already creating unbalance between how companies can produce in Europe and can produce in the rest of the world. Even in Europe, you see the different countries competing with each other, which creates internal competition between countries. And by the way, all this works if everybody in the industry does the same, because the difference in cost can be huge, not only in CapEx, but also in OpEx. Because for us, decarbonization, for example, relates to green electricity. And typically green electricity will be 3 times, 4 times more expensive than gas. So it means in terms of OpEx, a big difference. So it works if everybody does the same. But if competition doesn't do the same, then we could be in trouble. So it's a very interesting discussion for the future of the company, but at least we have roadmaps and we are serious about implementing them. That's the end of the presentation, I think, and it's probably time for you if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Sergio. I find it very interesting that you mentioned a few times the competitiveness, including in attracting key employees. And it's something that we've heard again and again. If you want to hire key talent today, you have to be sustainable. We have received a few questions. I will start with one, which is probably one of your favorite, Bernard, regarding industrial policy and competitiveness, but especially related to the difference in time horizon. Sustainability is usually longer in terms of time horizon than short-term competitiveness. So how do you deal with combining both short-term competitiveness with long-term sustainability?
It's a very broad question, but just to show you, and maybe it's a little bit of a very aggressive example, but I was in Peru 3 months ago, visiting our Lima factory, and the team there was very happy to announce to me that the Peruvian government will put hydrogen in place with pipelines, etc., which is very good for sustainability, because you can theoretically replace natural gas, by hydrogen based on green electricity. So great. Then I said, okay, how much will it cost for the megawatt hour of hydrogen? 220 euro. How much does it cost for the same megawatt hour today in natural gas? 9 euro. And I don't know when the technology will be available, but suppose that the technology is available in 2 or 3 years locally, who will use it? If everybody uses it, then great. But if there is only one competitor using this technology, then we have an issue. No, and this is the difficulty for us. For sure, every time we will invest in a new factory, we will put in place furnaces with fuel flexibility so that we can use gas or green electricity as much as possible when technology allows for that. It's a little bit more of CapEx, but at least we will have the flexibility to favor sustainability or favor cost depending on the reaction of competition and the evolution of regulation. But this is about the new factories or the extension of existing factories. But what do you do with the existing factories? So I think that what we see is that we have a plan. And I think the first steps about the 35% reduction of CO2 is really realistic. And I think that we will reach it between now and 2030. Some of the investment we will make will be profitable, will be accretive. Because when you reduce consumption, it's always profitable. But some of them will become gradually less profitable and less accretive. And then I think that everybody will look at competition and will look at regulation and say, what happens there?
Thank you, Bernard. We've also received, and you mentioned Scope 3 in your speech, but we've received a few questions regarding Scope 3. You evidently have many smaller companies in your network. How do you see your role in educating them, making them use new products which might have a green premium, might be more expensive? So how do you deal with that? How do you convince them to go for sustainability?
We are engaging in a lot of conversations with them, but maybe just a little bit of background information. So we have around 65% of our total emissions are based on scope 3. Out of that, I would say something like 40% is coming from the Portland cement, so the cement that we are buying. So basically, we are depending of what the cement industry has to do in terms of green cement, which doesn't really fully exist yet there, but there is a lot of investments and a lot of initiatives to try to bring it. So we are, in that sense, we have to deal there with few suppliers, not many. Then we have around another 25% is coming from metal, steel, and there you have green steel, but we probably need to have a premium on that. Then we have another 20% that is coming from paper liners. So the plastic board is surrounded by a paper, and sometimes also, and these paper liners also are only 2-3 suppliers globally on this. So let's say we have a good chunk of our scope 3 emissions are actually coming from very well targeted and very known kind of companies, big companies that are that are engaged already on this and big time. So that's the first answer. The second is, well, there is a tail, obviously, of many others. The rest 15% plus of suppliers that are actually smaller suppliers, and that's where this is the big effort. We have started to do that through EcoVadis. We are leveraging a lot EcoVadis and asking them to be part of EcoVadis and be able to follow all the I would say the requirements of EcoVadis, right? Have certain type of policies, and we are basically engaging with them now on a, I would say, daily basis to work on this. It's hard work. We are also demanding more information from the suppliers, not only on the scope 3, but also on recyclability and on packaging and things like that. So it's not only about the scope 3, but it's also having much more information on other topics that are very of interest for sustainability.
We have also a few attendees that want to understand better your target of minus 35%. Could you comment on that? What is the baseline?
Yes, it's sorry for that. Indeed, it's minus 35% intensity. Is compared to 2018 baseline. And there are many. We have run a whole, let's say, project for over a year of understanding what are the different initiatives one by one, and what is the business case. If they would bring us, let's say, an NPV positive scheme or not for all these initiatives, to try to figure out where do we go and how far can we go. Those initiatives range from, changing our forklifts from diesel to electrifying them, from changing LED lights in factories to actually much deeper changes like changing our dryers, which are the bigger consumptions of gas in our processes, to how we can electrify them, how can we actually do more things and on this. So it is, and maybe the last part is also, so there is a part on small initiatives that we need to do, and they are accretive, as Bernard was saying. There is a second section in terms of change of energy mix, I would say, and that we will play a lot with locally, where is the different sources of energy available and what is the cost. And there is a third part, which is a little bit more complicated, obviously, in terms of what can we change in our processes and in some of our big dryers that we need to innovate, and we are working together with the producers of these big dryers and machines to be able to come up with new ideas in order to become much more efficient in terms of energy, but also at the same time tackling issues like water, like Bernard was saying before, right? So
I can give you a few examples, very concrete one. We decided to replace the dryer in the Auneuil factory in France. This happened this year. When you buy the new technology replacing the old one, which was, I don't know, 15 years old, you can gain theoretically 15% of energy consumption. It's good for your invoice, for your bill, and it's good for sustainability and CO2 production. So this is typically a very easy investment to decide on because it's an accretive one. Then when we look at all the furnaces we have and all the dryers we have, I take the example of glass wool. Glass wool is produced with cullets of glass, so recycled glass for most of the raw material, but we need to smelt glass. So you need to heat it up to 1300 degrees in furnaces. And typically, for example, having only electrical furnaces is very difficult to manage and to find. So we need to have combined furnaces with electrical supply and gas supply, and try to use as much as possible the electrical supply. This is what we are doing gradually in all the investments we make in refurbishing furnaces or building new ones. So these are the very concrete examples that we have in place, next to thousands of very small actions at local level to fine tune and to tweak all the parameters the right way. I give you another example, again, very technical, but very interesting. Well, if you ever visited a plasterboard plant, you will see that it's basically starting with a liquid, which is mixing different products and gypsum and water. And then you put it between paper so that you have a flat plank, and then you dry it. The more you put water at the beginning, the more you have to dry at the end. It's very physical, it's very logical. So what we try to do is put as low as possible quantity of water at the entrance of the line so that we don't have to dry it afterwards. And managing this kind of processes extremely efficiently can make a big difference at the end. So a lot of actions.
You're also impacted heavily by regulations. You mentioned a few examples of factories abroad. How do you deal with that? Do you tend to produce more locally? Do you reorganize your portfolio according to regulations? How do you deal with very different sustainability regulations?
Yeah, we used to say that for most of the products, and I talk about plasterboard and glass wool, for example, we used to say that we are always producing locally because transport costs are high compared to the cost of the product. The product is cheap, huh? And the product is very voluminous, so expensive to travel. So usually it was a business which was a local business, and it's still to some extent. But what you see is that for the high margin product, you get more and more competition from outside Europe. The reason being that the constraints first on the regulation and the impact of regulation on cost, and second, the cost of energy, nothing to do with sustainability, simply the cost of energy, which exploded in Europe and not in the rest of the world, makes it for them competitive to produce outside Europe and to import into Europe. So it's becoming a more global business, we like it or not. And probably at some point in time, we will have to adapt our footprint of production to these kind of new rules. But it's not extremely urgent for us today like it is for the chemical industry. The chemical industry today is moving out of Europe, and in some countries in Europe which are helping them more than others, and moving out of Belgium, by the way. It's not the case of Etex, but it could become the case in the next years, yes.
A few questions are related to the skills and the governance that you have. I'm going to read a couple of them. One of the attendees asked who you believe are the key members of the business to create a sustainability team. Are these only family members, or have you added other people from the business to the team? And the question is, what leadership development needs have you identified to implement your sustainability objectives? And to what extent?
I will let Sergio answer. Maybe one comment about the family. You need to know that Etex is an old company where the family has been involved very much and very executively in the past. But since many years, there is a rule that no family member can be involved in any executive function in the company. So there is no family member anymore anywhere in the company. Meaning that the sustainability team, the ExCom, everything is basically based on management and individuals, individual profiles that we hire and or grow in the company. Where the family is involved is in the board and in the sustainability committee. And basically what they do, they basically choose the directions, they trigger the action, they assess the progress, yeah, they push. But the executive part is done fully by management. And then what we try to do is to, first of all, we consider sustainability to be part of the business. So these are the same managers who at some point in time are part of the sustainability team because they like it, and they need to be motivated for that. But it maybe 2 years or 3 years afterwards would be elsewhere in the business. Sergio, I don't know if you want to add something.
Yes, Bernard. And one important aspect to me is, so the people involved in this, as you saw in all the different work streams that we have, are coming from very different angles, right? They come from the HR, from operations, from the business itself, and that provides for very interesting, let's say, discussions and enriching the whole of the team, and pushing us. So if somebody has, for instance, for reporting and compliance, then we involve the people from the business, and how can they contribute to this? How can they benefit from having, let's say, reports and monthly reports on say water consumption and withdrawal, etc. And then the whole combination is very enriching. So I think that's a very, very valuable aspect to definitely highlight in this respect. I think in terms of coaching and let's say how do we prepare the teams for this, we are doing a lot. We are actually following a lot of different conferences. Everyone is going to on the specific topics, right? To maintain ourselves informed. We are constantly with our antennas here in the European Union, especially in regards to new regulations that are coming. We have a lot of support from top management in order to make things happen. So whenever we need support, or we don't have the knowledge in house, or we can have something additional to add to our I would say repertoire, I think that's very something that we can have easy access.
I give another example. Maybe one of the questions we had was, how can we be a sustainable company and look like a sustainable company if the salespeople who are in contact with the customer every day cannot talk about that? And I can tell you it's very different to sell plasterboard in Peru or to sell plasterboard in Nigeria or in France. So we had workshops with the sales team in each country discussing not only on what is the group doing on sustainability, but what should you do, could you do at your level in your country about sustainability, and what should you talk about, and what should you propose to the customers. So it was a very interactive series of sessions, which was very productive.
And we have, for instance, lately, a couple of instances where the client comes to us, and we have won some of these projects in terms of putting everything together, right? So they say, okay, you have actually EcoVadis, you are better than us in EcoVadis. You are actually being able to discussing carbon emissions and maybe joining for science-based targets, or at least having all these things. You are in Sustainalytics. And by the way, the sales guy that was able to go and approach those customers had received the training, etc. So you see the whole program coming together in order to benefit the client in a way. And for instance, all our efforts in terms of technical training, right? In terms of explaining our commercial people what is an environmental performance declaration, how they should read it, how the client should understand this, what are the tricks that other companies and competitors are doing in respect of that, is extremely, extremely valuable, because the sales guys are not confident enough to talk about it. So we have spent a lot of time, and it's a big effort to create ambassadors locally to be able to deliver the message, to prepare the documentation, different for work streams, for platforms. But it's going, and it's going very well.
Yeah, salespeople are indeed extremely important in the sustainability fight. A couple of questions are also regarding the longer term perspective. First would be climate adaptation. Have you taken, have you done a risk mapping of your supply chain? For example, flooding risks, heat. What have you learned from that? And if we would not reach our 2050 objective, what would happen? What would happen to Etex? How do you see yourself if the planet is indeed warming up?
Wow. Yeah, a few comments on that. First of all, answering your first question about risk management, we have a committee of the board, which is named Risk and Audit Committee, which is very active, and in which on a regular basis we review all the potential risks for the business, and there are a lot of them. And more and more we see some risk coming from climate change, and regulation linked to climate change. Water being, for example, a very key topic for us. As I told you, we are in Spain, we are in France, south of France. To give you an example, we are in Carpentras, where we have a large factory since the Lafarge history 20 years or 30 years ago. The question was about expanding this factory with an additional line. I don't think that today we would decide positively on this kind of investment anymore, because we are too much exposed to scarcity of water in this region. So it has influence, and we are looking at that. Will it completely transform the future of the company? No, because when you look at the real impact you see in the next 20, 30 years, typically where we are in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe, honestly, the impact of the heating will be limited. To be honest, there will be the temperature will increase probably more than 1.5 degrees, but most of the regions where we are will remain acceptable for first for living and second for producing. So I think this was the question. That maybe your last question, if you can repeat your last question.
Well, what if the world would indeed be warming up? How would you see it?
It will. It will eat up for sure. I think that I don't know how you understand it, and I'm fully convinced of what is happening today. And when you look at the stock, the inventory of CO2, which is already there, coming from all the industrial revolution in the last 150 years, this inventory of CO2 is sufficient to increase temperature with more than 1.5 degrees. So it will happen, and it's happening. And then the question is, what do we do for the additional inventory that we are building day by day for the time being? So I think we should prepare for this increase of temperature, because it's happening. But it depends on the business you are in. In the business we are in, I think that we have some time, and I think that it's not that we are lacking urgency. It's simply that we will depend on a lot of things. Because suppose that we decide to go for electrical furnaces, that means that we will have green electricity, and at the same time, all industries are doing the same, willing to go to green electricity instead of gas. And at the same time, we are favoring the electrical cars, and we are favoring the heat pumps in the houses. And I'm not sure we will have green electricity in sufficient amount and at an acceptable price in the next year. So if you want to replace your furnaces, you need to have suppliers. There is a scarcity of suppliers and engineers. And everybody is willing to replace the same furnaces in all industries at the same time. And I cannot comment about the cost of replacing this kind of infrastructure when everybody wants the same at the same time. So the supplier is in good shape to propose price increase. So when you look at all that, you like it or not, but it's going to take time. And I think that when we announce ambitions for 2030, and we said it's going to be 35%, I think we are realistic, and we will probably do it. But going much further will not depend on us.
A couple of questions regarding carbon pricing. Would an EU carbon import tax help you?
Oops, I think we lost them.
We have an internal.
I'm sorry.
Hello? I think you're on mute, Sergio.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. We will use my mic. It's better. Okay.
So the two questions regarding carbon pricing, would an EU carbon tax help you? And do you internally have a carbon pricing as well?
Yes, we have. So we analyze all investments in all domains based on carbon pricing, which is I think 125 euro per ton. And yeah, we look at the profitability of the investment based on this internal carbon pricing, which is kind of virtual, but I think it's a good way of analyzing investments. Now, is the ETS a good system? I don't know. It depends if you can get to a level playing field. If at the end of the day everybody uses the same kind of system, then it's perfect. I think it will drive the right behavior, and it will improve everything related to sustainability, and it will help the planet. But if some countries don't use it the same way or don't use it at all, then you create an imbalance, which is first of all weakening I would say the European industry, and second, not preserving the planet, because the production will move to places where they will produce without any constraint, and in many cases with very bad efficiency in terms of CO2. So I think it depends how at the end of the day it will be put in place.
Sergio, we also have a question for your long-term objectives. So you mentioned 2030 and not 2050. Can you comment on that? What about goals for 2050? You already mentioned that, well, there are things that need to happen for that, but can you comment on targets, long-term targets?
Maybe. No, Sergio is turning to me because no, we don't have that, honestly. We will, to be honest with you, we will have discussions with the board in the next weeks about SBTi targets, which are more ambitious than the targets we have today. And I think it's a good thing to go towards this direction and assess what it means for us. Honestly, it's easy to say. We could say, like, cement industry, we will be carbon neutral in 2050. Easy to say. I will not be there to confirm that this is the case. So honestly, we are more in a concrete plan. Okay, we are more. I don't think that we are today taking wrong decisions regarding carbon neutral situation in 2050. So having this kind of ambition would not change that much. I think the roadmaps we have in place, SBTi could change a little bit the roadmap. But for the rest, I think for a company like us, which is short term, we don't know what we will sell next month. We don't have recurring contracts. We don't know what we will sell next month. I can tell you already, having big ambitions and being very concrete about that and serious about that for 2030, it's not bad.
We also have many members of the Family Business Network attending this webinar, and some are wondering, how do you see a company owned by a family? Is it an advantage in the fight again for sustainability, or how do you view the role of a long-term family tie?
I think it's a very good thing. Because when we talk about sustainability, we talk about environment, CO2, GHG, but we also think about a lot of other things like safety at work, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's much broader. It's much broader than only, I would say, green production and green products. And this is something that you can do only if you have a long-term perspective on the business. And this is typically something that a family business can bring. And this is something which is much more difficult to put in place if you have a succession of private equity or funds investing in the company and then selling. So I think that it's, and by the way, this is a reasoning which is also true for the kind of industrial perspective. We are an industrial group that has to invest in long term. When we invest in a factory, we have a payback which is 10 years, 10, 12 years. And we do that since 40, 50 years. And we will probably continue to do so. So if we had a different types of ownership, that would be probably more difficult. No, I think it's a very, very good thing, and it's very coherent. And it puts us in a very good, I would say, position, starting point to really be serious about sustainability and innovation.
Maybe a final question, Bernard, regarding our scope at Chapter Zero Brussels. We are really targeting and helping boards and directors. How do you deal with that? I mean, you've mentioned a few examples and mechanisms which are in place. How do you make sure that all the skills and the mindset would be present at board level? And what do you still need for that to happen if it's not totally complete?
So by the way, you asked that to an executive manager. I don't decide on who is on the board, and it's normal. By the way, it's a normal way to manage governance. So I face a board which is, by the way, very, very good, very well balanced between family and independent directors. And what we try to do is to spend sufficient time with all of them, together or separately, to really explain the challenges, really explain what is happening on the regulatory side, what is happening on the competition side, what is happening, what are the scenarios for the growth of the company. We are a growing company. We are growing rapidly, and we will continue to grow rapidly. So how do you want to manage growth in front of all these challenges? And I think that by spending sufficient time and being very transparent about the challenges, and doing that in tempore non suspecto, meaning that we spend a lot of time explaining how we see the future in all aspects, not at the time of a decision. In tempore non suspecto, when you don't have anything special to decide, and then you spend time, and when a decision comes, then maybe you have a chance that everybody is well prepared to take the right decision, knowing all the aspects of the challenge and knowing all the dilemmas. So this is what we are trying to do.
But clearly, you have also put some mechanisms in place, either you or the board, for that to happen. Do you have like both executive teams and boards working together on some issues?
You mean executive team and
the board? Well, the sustainability committee at the board.
Yeah. So we have the sustainability committee working on a very regular basis with everybody in the company interested in sustainability for any reason. The strategy committee, which is looking at, for example, big investments or merger and acquisition, is requesting systematically a sustainability assessment of the potential target, for example. So we will not take, and I will give you another example. I will not give the name of a company which is active in insulation in Belgium, listed company. And at some point in time, that could have been interesting for us to look at this acquisition. So we looked at the file in the strategy committee. We didn't go to the page where we were talking about financials. We stayed at the analysis of the product, and the conclusion was this product is not sustainable. Forget it. And we stopped there. So this is the type of discussion we have in full transparency. And this is fully included in all decisions. I told you about the risk and audit committee looking at the risk, and everything related to flooding, water, heat is included. Now, I think that it's not perfect. You can always improve. But I really think that it's a topic which is managed the same way you would manage availability, the financing, or any operational and technical challenge you would have, and things like this, or competition coming with a breakthrough product. It's the same. We discuss sustainability in almost every topic.
That's very interesting. Sustainability should be ingrained into the business, like like NPV is understood by everybody, so sustainability should be understood by all members. I think we've reached now the end of this webinar. Thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you very much, Sergio, for your time. I think it's highly appreciated. Also, the comments that you've made on how you've dealt with sustainability. We will have a recording available for people that have not been able to attend, but I think the attendance was quite high for this webinar already. Thank you very much for your time. And
thank you to you. Thank you to you for your attention to Etex. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.